ideas that I want to try and weave together. I'm going to try to entangle them at least. I don't know if it's going to make anything that you would be able to call a weave or a very strong rope, but I've got some threads that I want to tie into a strand, and they're just, as they occur to me, I keep coming up to this wall of being able to express things, and I need to just start putting words to them. So I want to tell you about an experience that I had with my family. This is a funny story, I guess, more or less, with my in-laws. And this, let me try to describe, paint the picture here, put some words to what it was that happened. There was a viral internet video that was two MMA fighters that were in a street fight, and the video was made such that it looked as if it was happening in real life, as if this was phone footage from your phone, and someone just happened to capture this footage. It was made to look that way, produced that way, and it was a fight between a very stern, very stoic United States Marine, a Marine or a Navy SEAL or something like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is a difference between those two things. I understand. I just don't know which one it was. The Marine, I'm going to go with Marines because I like Marines better than the SEALs. And the Marine is standing there stoically, not being very flamboyant or braggadocious. He's facing an opponent that is this guy wearing dreadlocks, and he's very showboatish, and he's flaunting all of his skills by doing backflips and front flips and karate kicks in the air. And as they step into the ring with one another, with people surrounding him, the Marine, as the fight begins, immediately knocks him out with one hit, and you have this emotion of being, you have the emotion of this being such a poetic justice of this stoic Marine knocking out a really flamboyant, Oriental type of person. So there's very much this sort of otherness about it. And so the family was all standing around watching this video, and I had seen it before and didn't act impressed. And they asked me what I thought about it. They all are looking at me for some type of reaction, and I said, well, that movie was made, right? It was actually filmed for a movie. And they all looked at me as if I was some sort of 8-headed alien that had just walked into the room and asked them if I could use their restroom. And I thought, wow, why are people so silly? Why is this family just completely so silly about this? I mean, aren't they sort of put off that it's not the reality that they were buying into? And after a year of this happening, of this having happened, a year goes by and I look back and think, well, I was the weird one. I was the foolish one. I was the one that destroyed this fiction. Because it wasn't about what the reality of it was. It wasn't as if it was real. It was just a fiction that spoke something strongly to the family. And I didn't even tell you. You know, this whole family is very conservative, fundamental Christians. They have an investment in this national identity. And so when they see the Marine, stoic, not bragging, gain the poetic justice over the other, this is the truest form of their identity. Or it's a really good way to evoke that. It's not the truest. It evokes that national identity. And I was the stupid one for breaking the fourth wall. You wouldn't walk into a movie theater and say, "Hello, do you guys not understand that this is not real? This is made in Hollywood by a bunch of silly, left-wing activists that don't believe in eating animals," or some, why I took it there, I don't know. Well, it's obvious why, but to walk into a movie theater and do that is outrageous. You should be kicked out of the movie theater, even though you're telling the truth, right? You're telling the truth. This isn't real. This isn't reality. This is produced. So that's pushing me further into some of the ideas that I'm getting from reading books like Fearful Symmetry by Northrop Frye. Kierkegaard and Nietzsche are two other people that I have been reading, and there are some quotes of theirs that I just want to pull out and try and tie this all together. And my thrust here is to sort of tie together this theme of art and religion being essentially the same thing. And that's not the most obvious thing to say in our postmodern condition, where we have art and religion being two vastly, almost at war with one another things, highly contentious things, let's say. They do crop up in the sight of each other, obviously, but there are grand senses in which Americans are divided over these two things, I would offer. And that's a very, very bold statement that I shouldn't just be able to get away with saying and not explaining myself. But I don't want to go there right now. I want to talk about, I want to quote to you some people who are much smarter than I and try and get some help from these guys. So William Blake, this is a poem of his. A poet, a painter, a musician, an architect. The man or woman who is not one of these is not a Christian. You must leave your fathers and mothers and houses and lands if they stand in the way of art. Prayer is the study of art. Praise is the practice of art. Fasting and etc. all relate to art. The outward ceremony is Antichrist. So, William Blake is explicitly tying these two ideas together of art and Christianity being being brothers. And Kierkegaard says the same thing, essentially. He says, the man who is not religious nor an artist is a fool. And that, okay, so most people aren't artists, but I think that we all have an element of creativity that we could look at as if we practice our lives as an art, then we can create from the chaos that is into something new, into a new form, a new life. I also think that Nietzsche has some things to say towards this as well, even though I don't think he has the same outcome of being hopeful that art and Christianity or art and religion can coexist. I think he sees them as brothers at war with one another. And this might even be greater elucidated as the archetype of the dueling brothers, which I would even propose that maybe the nation of the United States is embodying that archetype right now in the way that it is disentangled its art and its religious centers, and it has created a grander element of contention and division. So let me read his quote. Toward a psychology of the artist, if there is to be art, if there is to be any aesthetic doing and seeing, one psychological condition is indispensable: frenzy. Frenzy must have enhanced the excitability of the whole machine, or else there is no art. So he's speaking of art as this state of frenziness that must come unfettered and untrammeled by intellect or logic or reason. All of these things we must be completely free from, not free from, but they must be shed off if we are to express this artistic frenzy. And he goes on to say, in this state, one enriches everything out of one's own fullness. Whatever one sees, whatever one wills, is seen swelled, taut, strong, overloaded with strength. A man in this state transforms things until they mirror his power, until they are reflections of his perfection. This having to transform into perfection is art. Even everything that he has not yet becomes an occasion of joy in himself. In art, man enjoys himself as perfection. It would be permissible to imagine an opposite state, a specific anti-artistry by instinct, a mode of being which would impoverish all things, making them thin and consumptive. And as a matter of fact, history is rich in such anti-artists, in such people who are starved by life and must of necessity grab things, eat them out, and make them more meager. For this is, for example, the case of the genuine Christian. Of Pascal, for example, a Christian who would at the same time be an artist simply does not occur. One should not be childish and object by naming Raphael or some homeopathic Christian of the 19th century. Raphael said yes, Raphael did yes. Consequently, Raphael was no Christian. So Nietzsche obviously here expressing his not very high view of modern Christians or even Christianity overall, seeing as how this is what it has brought us to. And he thinks that the Christian cannot necessarily exist as an artist. And he does have a high view of art, and he has a high view of the Christian morals that have gotten us to this point, but he sees them as becoming self-defeating. And so I want to wrap this up. I want to continue to try and work on these ideas and write them out to be a little bit more tightly linked and hopefully better defined. See you in the funny pages.